The Zaphirian Empire had conquered 17 star systems in 3 months. Their sleek warships cut through space like silver daggers. Each vessel was a perfect example of calculated destruction. Admiral Vex Tar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Edge. He watched another world fall to their superior tactics. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Zaphirian technology was the finest in the galaxy. Their ships moved in perfect formations. Every weapon fired with mathematical precision. Every battle ended in overwhelming victory. Status report. Vex Tar commanded, his forearms folded behind his back in the traditional pose of Zaphirian authority. The human colony of New Sol has been isolated, Admiral. His tactical officer reported. Their defense grid is primitive. Kinetic barriers and plasma cannons. Technology we mastered centuries ago. Estimated conquest time. 6 hours. Vex Tar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The humans had been the last holdouts in this sector. They clung to their outdated notions of defensive warfare. The Galactic Council had declared the Zaphirians the supreme masters of military strategy. This was rightfully earned. They had studied war for millennia. They turned combat into a precise science of overwhelming force and tactical superiority. The Zaphirian fleet hung in space like a constellation of death, 47 ships arranged in perfect battle formation. Each ship knew its exact position. Every weapon had a calculated firing arc. No energy was wasted. No movement was without purpose. On New Sol, Captain Lee Min-jun received the transmission from the orbital defense station. His small garrison of Marines looked to him for orders. What could they do against such overwhelming odds? The planet had no fleet. Their defenses were basic. They were completely outgunned. Sir, Sergeant Park Ji-hae approached with a worried expression. Long-range sensors are picking up something else. A single ship, heading this way from the outer system. Min-jun frowned. Reinforcements? I wasn't told about any scheduled arrivals. No, sir. It's broadcasting human signatures, but the ship configuration is unlike anything in our databases. It's massive, easily 3 times the size of a Zaphirian dreadnought. Above them, Vex Tar noticed the anomaly on his sensors. A primitive human vessel, outdated and slow, limping toward the battle zone. He dismissed it with contempt. A refugee ship, perhaps. Or some desperate attempt at evacuation. Ignore it. Focus on the planetary assault. Sub-Commander Crix was the fleet's senior tactician. He studied the readings with growing unease. Admiral, the ship's energy signatures are unusual, and its approach vector suggests it's not fleeing. One ancient human ship against our entire fleet? Vex Tar's laugh echoed through the bridge. Even humans aren't that foolish. The mysterious vessel continued its steady approach. As it drew closer, its true nature became clear. It wasn't running. It was coming to fight. The ship's hull bore the weathered insignia of the Earth Defense Force. A name was painted across its bow that would soon echo across the galaxy. UES, Incheon. Captain Kim Soo-jin stood on her bridge. She studied the tactical display with calm eyes. Her ship was old, a relic from humanity's earlier space conflicts. But she and her crew had been through wars the Zaphirians couldn't imagine. They had learned their craft not in sterile academies. They learned it in the chaos of desperate battles. Survival meant adaptation. The Incheon was scarred from countless engagements. Her hull showed patches and repairs. Her weapons were outdated by galactic standards. But every system had been tested in real combat. Every crew member had survived battles that others wouldn't believe. Ma'am, her weapons officer reported quietly. Lieutenant Yoon Jae-sung kept his voice steady. We're outnumbered 47-1. Kim nodded calmly. I've seen worse odds. Besides, they think they understand war. Let's show them what humans learned when we had to fight each other for 3,000 years. The Zaphirians watched in amazement. The lone human ship positioned itself between their fleet and the planet. This made no tactical sense. One ship could not stop 47. It was impossible. It was illogical. It was suicide. Vextar ordered a warning shot. He was confident that the humans would retreat once they understood the futility of their position. The plasma bolt struck the Incheon's shields. They flared, but held. In response, the human ship did something no Zaphirian had ever witnessed. It accelerated directly toward their formation. "Admiral," Crix's voice carried a note of concern. "They're not retreating. They're charging us." The bridge fell silent. Every tactical model said this was impossible. Ships didn't charge into superior formations. They found advantageous positions. They used range and firepower. They followed logical patterns. The human ship followed no logical pattern at all. "All ships, maintain formation," Vextar ordered. "Prepare to engage. One ship cannot threaten our entire fleet." But as the Incheon approached, something changed in the Zaphirian formation. Ships that had been perfectly positioned began to shift. Captains who had never doubted their superiority began to question their assumptions. The human ship wasn't just approaching. It was broadcasting on all frequencies. Captain Kim's voice reached every ship in the Zaphirian fleet. "This is Captain Kim Soo-jin of the Earth Defense Force. You have threatened innocent civilians. You have invaded human space. You have declared war on people who only want to live in peace. That ends now." Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They're giving us an ultimatum? One ship against 47? "Yes, Admiral," Crix replied. His voice was troubled. "And they're still accelerating toward us." The Incheon plowed through space like an ancient Earth battleship charging into a storm. Her engines glowed white-hot. Her weapons powered up. Her crew prepared for a battle that would change the galaxy's understanding of what humans could do. Captain Kim looked at her crew. Each face showed determination. They knew the odds. They understood the cost. But they also knew something the Zaphirians didn't. Sometimes winning meant being willing to lose everything. Sometimes the only way to protect what you love was to fight when fighting seemed impossible. The battle was about to begin. The UES Incheon plowed through space toward the Zaphirian fleet. Captain Kim Soo-jin watched the enemy formation with calm focus. She had spent decades learning the hardest lessons war could teach. This was just another test. "Weapons status," she called out. Lieutenant Yoon Jae-sung checked his displays. "Kinetic railguns at full charge. Missile tubes loaded with our special packages. Point defense systems online. Reasonton." "Lee, sir." "Leesenton." "Engineering?" Chief Engineer Han Dong-wook's voice crackled over the comm. "All systems green, Captain. The old girl's ready to show these aliens what human engineering can do." The Incheon was built differently than other ships. Where alien vessels prioritized elegance and efficiency, human ships were designed for one thing: survival. Every system had backups. Every compartment could be sealed. Every weapon could be operated manually if computers failed. Admiral Vex's Tar watched the approaching human ship with growing confusion. Every tactical simulation said that a single ship should retreat when facing overwhelming odds. It was the logical response. Preserve resources. Avoid unnecessary casualties. Maintain strategic position. But the humans weren't following any logical pattern. "Sub-Commander Crix, analyze their approach vector," Vextar ordered. The tactical officer's claws clicked rapidly across his console. "Admiral, I don't understand it. They're heading straight for our center formation. No evasive maneuvers. No attempt to exploit any perceived weakness in our line. It's as if they want to be surrounded. Action 10 Lee." On New Seoul, Captain Lee Min-jun watched the impossible scene unfold. His communications officer had managed to establish contact with the mysterious battleship. "Captain Kim," Min-jun spoke into the comm unit. "You're flying into a trap," There are too many of them. Kim's voice came back steady and calm. Captain Lee, how long have humans been fighting wars? The question caught Minjun off guard. What do you mean? How long have we been fighting each other? Learning, adapting, surviving. Minjun thought about it. Thousands of years, but these Zaphirians have been fighting for conquest, Kim continued. Perfect formations, overwhelming force, clean victories against opponents who fight like they do. But humans? We learned to fight when we had nothing left to lose. When being outnumbered was just another day. When survival meant doing the impossible. The Incheon reached the edge of the Zaphirian formation. Suddenly, everything changed. The human ship didn't engage in long-range bombardment like civilized warfare dictated. Instead, it dove directly into the enemy fleet. Its hull screamed past Zaphirian vessels so close that their shields sparked against each other. What are they doing? Vextar demanded. Crix's analysis came back confused and fragmented. They're fighting at point-blank range, Admiral. Their weapons are designed for close combat. But that's tactically insane. At this range, both sides take maximum damage. That was exactly the point. The Incheon's railguns fired at ranges where Zaphirian shields were useless. Kinetic slugs punched through hulls designed to deflect energy weapons. But more importantly, the human ship was built differently. Heavier armor, redundant systems, compartmentalized design that could take catastrophic damage and keep fighting. Lieutenant Commander Choi Sung-min coordinated the assault with grim efficiency. He was the Incheon's tactical officer. Target their formation anchors first. Force them to break pattern. The Zaphirians had spent centuries perfecting formation warfare. Each ship had a precise role, a specific position, an optimal range. When the human ship forced them into a close-quarters brawl, their perfect formations became liabilities. Ships collided with each other, trying to avoid the rampaging human vessel. Precision firing solutions became impossible when the enemy was weaving between your own ships. Worst of all, the humans seemed to be targeting not for maximum damage, but for maximum chaos. They're not trying to destroy us, Crix realized with growing horror. They're trying to make us destroy ourselves. Admiral Vextar watched his perfectly ordered fleet descend into pandemonium. 3 of his ships had collided, trying to avoid the human vessel. 2 more had accidentally fired on each other in the confusion. The human ship itself was taking tremendous damage. But it kept fighting. It kept moving. It kept turning his tactical masterpiece into a desperate brawl. All ships, he commanded. Fall back to firing positions. Re-establish formation. But the human captain had anticipated this response. As the Zaphirian ships tried to withdraw and regroup, the Incheon launched a spread of missiles. Not at the ships, but at the empty space where they would have to move. The missiles exploded in clouds of chaff and electromagnetic interference. They created a sensor dead zone that made formation flying impossible. In the confusion, Zaphirian ships found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate, fighting a running battle against an enemy that seemed to thrive in chaos. Captain Kim smiled grimly as her ship shuddered under enemy fire. The hull was scarred and bleeding atmosphere, but her crew worked with the practiced efficiency of warriors who had learned their trade in humanity's bloodiest conflicts. The difference was experience. The Zaphirians had fought wars against civilized opponents, enemies who fought according to rules, who retreated when outmatched, who valued their ships and crews above victory. Humans had learned to fight against other humans, against opponents who were just as smart, just as determined, just as willing to do whatever it took to win. That created a completely different kind of warrior. "Ma'am," Yoon Jae-sung reported, "we've disabled 12 enemy vessels and forced the rest into defensive positions." "Good," Kim replied. "Now let's show them what humans do when someone threatens our people." The Incheon turned toward the Zaphirian flagship. Her engines burned at maximum power. Her remaining weapons charged for one final assault. Her crew prepared for the kind of sacrifice that humans understood better than any species in the galaxy. The art of human war wasn't about superior technology. It wasn't about perfect tactics or overwhelming numbers. It was about being willing to pay any price to protect what mattered. The Zaphirians were about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. The human ship accelerated toward their command vessel like a meteor of controlled fury. Every shot that hit her hull seemed to make her more dangerous, not less. Every system that failed was bypassed by human ingenuity and determination. Admiral Vextar watched the approaching vessel and realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to teach a lesson. And that lesson was simple. Don't threaten human civilians. Ever. The battle was far from over. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Zaphirians had met something they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't defeat. They had met humans at war. The battle had raged for 2 hours. The UES Incheon was a floating wreck that somehow kept fighting. Half her armor was gone. 3 of her 6 railgun turrets were destroyed. Her hull showed the scars of focused enemy fire. But Captain Kim Soo-jin stood on her bridge with the same calm determination she had shown at the battle's start. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The air tasted of smoke and ozone. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the faces of her crew. But nobody suggested retreat. Nobody asked about survival odds. They had a job to do. Admiral Vextar could not comprehend what he was witnessing. His fleet was the pride of the Zaphirian military. 47 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. They were being systematically dismantled by a single human ship that should have been destroyed hours ago. Damage report on the human vessel, he demanded. Sub-Commander Crix consulted his sensors. His voice was increasingly uncertain. Admiral, by all tactical assessments, that ship should be dead. They've lost primary power twice. Their main reactor was hit directly. Their hull integrity is below 30%. Then why are they still fighting? I don't know, sir. Every time we think we've delivered a killing blow, they adapt. They reroute power. They bypass damaged systems. They even manually operate weapons that should be impossible to fire. What Vextar couldn't understand was that human ships weren't just machines. They were extensions of the people who crewed them. Every system had backup protocols designed by a species that had spent millennia learning to keep fighting when everything went wrong. In the Incheon's engineering section, Chief Han Dong-wook worked miracles. He used duct tape, bypass cables, and sheer stubborn determination to keep the ship alive. Jiho, he called to his assistant. Reroute power from the galley systems to the port railgun. Petty Officer Nam Jiho looked up from the sparking console he was rewiring. Chief, the galley is our backup life support processor. Then we'll breathe thin air and eat emergency rations, Han replied without hesitation. But we'll keep shooting. This was the human way. Sacrifice comfort for capability. Give up safety for the ability to protect others. Every human ship was designed with this philosophy. Every human crew trained for it. On the bridge, Lieutenant Yoon Jae-sung had taken over the damaged tactical station personally. He manually targeted weapon systems that the computer could no longer coordinate. His hands moved across controls, slick with his own blood from flying debris. Captain, I have a shot at their command ship. Kim studied the tactical display. The Zaphirian flagship was trying to coordinate its scattered fleet, but its position made it vulnerable to a close-range attack. The shot would require flying through concentrated enemy fire. It was almost, certainly, suicide. Take us in. Ma'am. At that range, their return fire will. Then, we'll finish what they started, Kim completed calmly. Do it. The Incheon began her final charge toward the enemy flagship. Zaphirian weapons pounded her hull. Energy beams carved through her armor. Plasma torpedoes exploded against her shields. But she came on like an avalanche. Inevitable. Unstoppable. Carrying the accumulated weight of human history. In his command center on New Seoul, Captain Lee Min-jun watched in awe and terror. The orbital battle had become something beyond tactical engagement. It was a demonstration of pure human will. "Sir," Sergeant Park Ji-hae reported, "the Zaphirian ground assault has been postponed. Their troops are holding position, waiting for the fleet engagement to resolve." Min-jun understood. The aliens had expected a quick, clean victory followed by organized planetary conquest. Instead, they were witnessing something that challenged their entire understanding of warfare. On the Dominion's edge, Admiral Vex Tar made a decision that would haunt him forever. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Maximum power. The response was immediate and devastating. 44 Zaphirian ships focused their combined firepower on the Incheon. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes converged in a storm of destruction that lit up local space like a newborn star. When the light faded, the human battleship was still there, battered beyond recognition, trailing atmosphere and debris, her hull glowing cherry red from absorbed energy. The Incheon continued her charge. Her remaining weapons fired in ragged salvos. Her engines pushed past their design limits. Her crew worked stations that should have been abandoned hours ago. "How?" Vextar whispered. "How are they still alive?" Sub-Commander Crix had been studying human historical databases. He was trying to understand their enemy. What he found terrified him. "Admiral, I've been analyzing human military history. They've been fighting each other continuously for over 3,000 years. Every major conflict, every tactical innovation, every lesson learned in blood. It's all been against other humans. What does that mean?" "It means, sir, that they learned to fight against opponents who were just as stubborn, just as innovative, just as determined to survive as they were. Their entire military philosophy is based on the assumption that their enemy will be equally capable of adapting and overcoming." Vextar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Zaphirians had conquered 17 star systems, but they had always fought opponents who fought like civilized beings, with formation tactics, logical strategies, reasonable responses to overwhelming odds. The humans fought like cornered predators. Every human weapon was designed to work when everything else failed. Every human tactic assumed the worst possible conditions. Every human crew trained to keep fighting when any reasonable being would surrender. The Incheon reached point-blank range with the Zaphirian flagship. Her hull was more whole than metal. Her crew worked in vacuum suits as atmosphere leaked into space. But her weapons still functioned. Captain Kim gave the order that would echo through galactic history. "All weapons. Fire everything we have left." The dying human battleship unleashed every remaining weapon she possessed. Railgun slugs punched through the flagship's command section. Missiles overwhelmed point defenses and detonated against critical systems. Even her damaged energy weapons contributed to the devastating barrage. The Dominion's edge reeled under the assault. Her shields collapsed. Her hull was breached in dozens of places. Admiral Vextar found himself staring at a human ship that was falling apart around its crew, but still fighting. "Sir," his damage control officer reported in shock. "They're launching boarding pods." Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They're boarding us? Their ship is practically destroyed." But the humans weren't done. Even as the Incheon died around them, her Marines were preparing for the next phase of the battle. Because humans had learned long ago that sometimes winning meant being willing to lose everything. Lieutenant Colonel Song Min-ah led the boarding party into the Zaphirian flagship. She carried weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat and the inherited tactical knowledge of a species that had turned war into a science of impossible survival. The Zaphirians were about to learn what humans did when they had nothing left to lose. The corridors of the Dominion's edge had never seen combat. Zaphirian ships were designed for space warfare. Clean, distant, technological. The idea that enemy soldiers would actually board a flagship was so primitive, so barbaric, that they had no protocols for it. Lieutenant Colonel Song Min-ah moved through the alien ship with her surviving Marines. Each step was a masterclass in adaptive warfare. The Zaphirians had superior technology, better armor, overwhelming numbers. None of it mattered in the confined spaces where humans excelled. The air in the alien ship was thick and humid. The gravity was heavier than Earth normal. The lighting was wrong for human eyes. But Song and her Marines had fought in worse conditions. They adapted. "Contacts ahead," whispered Corporal Oh Taejin. His rifle was trained on the corridor junction. Song held up her hand for silence. The sound of approaching Zaphirian soldiers echoed through the ship's metallic passages. Heavy footsteps. The mechanical whir of powered armor. Alien voices coordinating in their clicking language. What the Zaphirians didn't understand was that humans had been fighting in close quarters for millennia. Every urban battle, every ship-boarding action, every desperate defense of confined spaces had taught them lessons that no academy could replicate. The Zaphirian soldiers rounded the corner in perfect formation. Their energy weapons were charged. Their tactics were flawless for open battlefield combat. Song's Marines were waiting. The humans had positioned themselves not where tactical doctrine suggested, but where human experience had taught them enemies wouldn't expect. They fired from maintenance alcoves, emergency hatches. Even the ceiling access panels that the Zaphirians hadn't considered vulnerable positions. The alien formation collapsed into chaos as soldiers fell to precisely aimed human weapons. But more importantly, the humans didn't fight like civilized warriors. They fought like survivors. Sergeant Kim Dong-hyun disabled a Zaphirian's powered armor with an electromagnetic grenade. Then he used the alien's own weapon against his squad mates. The tactic was brutal, effective, completely unexpected. Private Lee Yoo-jin turned a corridor intersection into a kill zone. She used improvised explosives made from ship's equipment and medical supplies. The Zaphirians had never encountered enemies who could turn their own environment into weapons. On the Incheon's dying bridge, Captain Kim monitored the boarding action through her Marine's helmet cameras. Her ship was past saving. The reactor was failing. Life support was gone in half the compartments. But her crew was writing a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. "Captain," Chief Han called from engineering. "Reactor containment is failing. We have maybe 10 minutes before." "Understood, Chief. All hands, prepare for evacuation. But keep those guns firing until the last possible second." Admiral Vextar watched his flagship being systematically dismantled from within. The human boarding party consisted of only 24 soldiers. But they were fighting his ship's security forces to a standstill, using tactics that defied every military principle the Zaphirians understood. "How are so few of them holding off our entire security division?" he demanded. Sub-Commander Crix had been monitoring the battle. His analysis was disturbing. "Admiral, they're not fighting to win territory or achieve tactical objectives. They're fighting to cause maximum disruption. Every action is designed to make us commit more resources while they adapt to our responses. That's not warfare. That's chaos." "Yes, sir, but it's controlled chaos." The truth was that Song Min-ah and her Marines were demonstrating something the galaxy had never seen. Human warfare wasn't about superior technology or perfect formations. It was about turning impossible situations into survivable ones through sheer adaptability and determination. In the ship's main corridor, Song encountered Admiral Vextar himself. He was flanked by his elite guard. The Zaphirian admiral was a magnificent figure in his ceremonial armor. He carried weapons that represented centuries of technological advancement. Song was a scarred human marine in damaged armor. She carried a rifle that was already 3 generations obsolete. The confrontation should have been no contest. "Human." Vextar spoke through his suit's translator. "You have fought bravely, but this ends now. Surrender, and your crew will be treated according to the Galactic Convention." Song looked at the alien admiral with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many wars. You still don't understand, do you? Understand what? We're not fighting for victory. We're fighting so you understand what happens when you threaten human civilians. The battle that followed was everything the Zaphirians thought they had mastered, and everything they had failed to learn. Vex-Tar's guards fired with perfect accuracy at targets that refused to stay in one place. Song's Marines used the ship's own architecture against its defenders. They turned maintenance shafts into attack routes. They used gravity generators as improvised weapons. But the real lesson wasn't in the tactics. It was in the persistence. When Song's rifle jammed, she continued fighting with her sidearm. When her sidearm ran out of ammunition, she used alien weapons taken from fallen enemies. When those failed, she fought hand-to-hand with training that came from a species that had never learned to quit. Admiral Vex-Tar found himself dueling a human marine who had been shot twice. She had a broken arm. She was fighting with a Zaphirian blade she had taken from his own guard. Every wound she took seemed to make her more dangerous, not less. "Why won't you die?" he gasped, as she deflected his strike and countered with an attack that bypassed his armor's weak points. "Because," Song replied, pressing her assault. "I have people counting on me to come home." That was the difference. The Zaphirians fought for conquest, for glory, for the expansion of their empire. The humans fought for something simpler and infinitely more powerful. They fought for each other. The final blow came not from superior skill or better equipment. It came from something the Zaphirians had never encountered. A warrior who fought not for glory or conquest, but for the simple human truth that some things were worth any sacrifice. As Admiral Vex-Tar fell, his fleet finally understood what they were facing. This wasn't a battle between civilized military forces. This was contact with a species that had turned warfare into an art of survival, and survival into an act of love for those they protected. The Incheon finally died in a flash of nuclear fire that lit up the system. But her lesson lived on in the scattered Zaphirian fleet that no longer seemed so confident in their mastery of war. Song Minna and her surviving Marines were picked up by rescue pods from the remaining Zaphirian ships, not as prisoners, but as something else entirely. As teachers who had just given the galaxy its first lesson in what humans could do when pushed too far. The war was over, but the real lesson was just beginning. The destruction of the UES Incheon sent shockwaves across the system. These had nothing to do with her reactor explosion. Admiral Vex-Tar lay dying on his flagship's deck. Lieutenant Colonel Song Minna knelt beside him despite her own wounds. "Your ship is gone," he whispered. "Your crew is dead. You have lost everything." Song looked at him with something that might have been pity. Through the flagship's shattered viewports, the remaining Zaphirian fleet could see New Sol. The planet still orbited peacefully below. No planetary bombardment had occurred. No invasion force had landed. A single human ship and her crew had bought something that no amount of superior firepower could take away. Time for people to live another day. On New Sol, Captain Lee Min-jun received the transmission from the dying Admiral Vex-Tar. The alien's voice was weak, but carried a message that would echo through the galaxy. "Human Commander, we withdraw our forces from your system. The Zaphirian Empire will reconsider its expansion plans in this sector." Min-jun looked at his communications officer. Corporal Kim Hae-jin was monitoring fleet movements. "Are they really leaving?" Yes, sir. All Zaphirian ships are jumping to hyperspace. They're running. But they weren't just running. They were carrying a story. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 47 species gathered to hear the Zaphirian report. The Council's military analysts were calling it the New Sol Incident. Subcommander Crix was now acting fleet commander after Vex-Tar's death. He stood before the assembled delegates with the bearing of someone who had seen the impossible. "Honorable representatives," he began, "we have encountered a form of warfare that does not fit our existing tactical models. The Altarian delegate was a crystalline being who communicated through harmonic resonances. It sang a question. You faced a primitive human fleet and suffered casualties. This seems unremarkable. Not a fleet, Honored One. A single ship. One ancient human battleship destroyed or disabled 19 vessels of our most advanced battle fleet. It forced the withdrawal of the remaining 28. The council chamber fell silent. Mathematics didn't work that way. Superior technology and overwhelming numbers should have guaranteed Zaphirian victory. Explain, demanded the Centauri representative. Crix activated a holographic display showing the battle. The humans did not fight to our standards of warfare. They ignored formation tactics. They ignored acceptable loss ratios. They ignored logical strategic objectives. Instead, they fought with what we can only describe as complete disregard for their own survival in service of protecting others. The display showed the Incheon's suicidal charge into the Zaphirian formation. It showed her crew continuing to fight while their ship died around them. It showed Marines boarding an enemy flagship not to capture it, but simply to ensure their message was understood. This is not warfare, protested the vegan delegate. This is madness. Yes, Crix agreed. The truth was spreading through the galaxy like ripples from a dropped stone. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species with advanced technology. They were something unprecedented. A civilization that had spent thousands of years learning to fight against opponents as intelligent and determined as themselves. Dr. Elena Vasquez was Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. She stood to address the assembly. She was a small, unassuming woman who had spent her career studying interspecies relations. Now she found herself explaining her own people to a galaxy that suddenly saw them very differently. Honored delegates, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human military philosophy. The chamber's attention focused on her with an intensity that made clear how much the New Soul incident had shaken galactic assumptions about warfare. Most species develop military technology to fight external threats. Predators. Hostile environments. Competing civilizations. Humans are different. We developed our military technology to fight each other. She gestured to historical displays showing Earth's bloody past. For over 3 millennia, humans have been in continuous warfare with other humans. Every tactical innovation, every technological advance, every strategic doctrine was tested against opponents who were equally intelligent, equally motivated, equally capable of adaptation. The implications settled over the council like a cold weight. Every other species had learned warfare against inferior opponents or external threats. Only humans had learned it against themselves. What does this mean for galactic security? Asked the Draconian ambassador. Doctor. Vasquez smiled with the kind of expression that made several delegates unconsciously step backward. It means that humans don't see impossible odds as insurmountable obstacles. We see them as Tuesday. Axis Day. The formal presentation continued for hours. But the real message was simpler. The galaxy had discovered that humans didn't fight wars the way civilized beings should. They fought them the way someone fights when losing means their children don't come home. 6 months later, Captain Lee Min-jun stood in the newly constructed memorial garden on New Seoul. A simple stone monument listed the names of the Incheon's crew. But the real memorial was the colony itself. Still free. Still growing. Still protected by the sacrifice of warriors who had redefined what the galaxy thought it knew about war. The Zaphirian Empire had not attempted another expansion. Neither had the Andromedans, the vegan hegemony, or any of the other conquest-minded civilizations that had been eyeing human space. Word had spread. Humans didn't just have ships and weapons. They had something far more dangerous. They had learned to fight like cornered animals, with the intelligence to plan and the technology to execute plans that turned superior numbers into disadvantages. As Minjun read the memorial inscription, he smiled at the final line. They taught the galaxy that humans don't master war. We survive it. The message was clear to anyone considering threatening human space. You might win the battle, but humans would make sure you understood the cost. And in a galaxy full of civilized species who fought according to reasonable rules, that made humanity the most terrifying military force anyone had ever encountered. Trade agreements began appearing on diplomatic channels. Non-aggression pacts were signed without negotiation. Species that had never contacted Earth sent ambassadors with offers of friendship and mutual defense. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human protection had begun. In the depths of space, where the Incheon had made her final stand, a small beacon was placed. It broadcast a simple message in 47 languages. Here died heroes who taught the galaxy the price of threatening the innocent. The galaxy had learned. When humans say they will protect something, they mean it. When humans say they will fight for something, they will fight until there is nothing left of themselves to give. And when humans say, never again, the galaxy now knows they mean exactly that.